Scientifically speaking, we're sharing the view. From labs to clinics, breakthrough shining through. With minds that inspire and stories to unfold. Scientifically speaking, the future's being told.
Welcome to another episode of Scientifically Speaking with Christine on Oz Arab Media. Today, we're exploring a fascinating area where science meets everyday life about how communication, mindset, and behavioral habits shape our success, our well-being, and even our relationships. My guest today is Nim Gholkar, one of Australia's leading success coaches and international keynote speakers. With a background in English literature, decades of coaching experience, and a global career training teams across Australia, India, the Middle East, and Asia. Nim combines behavioral science, communication psychology, and human storytelling to help people achieve lasting change. Nim, what a great, amazing introduction, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was a very kind introduction. Thank you so much.
No worries, of course. Nim, if you don't mind, I start straight away in our amazing topic. Your work sits at an intersection between psychology, communication, and personal development. If you can just tell us in simple words, what do you do?
In the simplest of terms, Christine, I help people understand themselves better and make better decisions in their careers and lives in general.
Right.
You might find that most of us have a sneaking suspicion that there's potential within us that we are not quite tapping at any given point in life. And my job is to help people tap into that potential and become the person you know you are capable of becoming.
Amazing. That is very positive. We feel like there is hope somewhere, somehow. You've coached thousands of people, like I've mentioned earlier, and all around the world. What originally drew you to really doing what you do, especially in studying human behavior and communication?
Well, I've always been fascinated by people, by how people think and by how people act, right from a very early age. So I remember even as a child, I used to spend a lot of time reading, observing people, trying to figure out what it is that motivates them. Why do they do what they do? Why do they think in a certain manner? And I think that early curiosity has now become this lifelong obsession to really understand human behavior, mindset, and how people communicate and interact with each other.
That is amazing. Curiosity in a different aspect, if I can say. Yes. You yourself are a migrant and had a migrant journey from Mumbai to Sydney. How do you feel this shaped the perspective of motivation and resilience that you've got? And how has that personal experience influenced really your approach as a coach and as an author?
Well, when you're a migrant, you learn firsthand what it is to start from scratch.
Right.
New country, new culture, new rules. And I think when you've gone through that experience, it builds and enhances a sense of empathy in you. So whenever I'm coaching, I'm not really doing it from a theory perspective. It's all from lived experience. Having had to find your own voice, having had to reinvent yourself, having learned to navigate uncertainty. So I think in a lot of the work that I do, these are the tools that I provide the clients in terms of building resilience, mindset, communication, and overall enhancing your potential.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. Now, modern neuroscience tells us that our brains are wired to just be efficient, right? Not for success. How do habits and mindset shape the outcomes we experience in life and at work from your perspective?
Great question. So, Christine, our brain's main job, and we know this like from time immemorial, that it is to keep us safe. Right? And it is to save energy. That's basically the main job of our brain.
Yeah.
This means that at any given time, our brain typically prefers the familiar because that is safe, even if that familiar is not good for us, right? And habits and mindset are the way we reprogram that brain so that we move past that default setting and work towards outcomes that are beneficial for us and for our own growth. So I find that when we actually build intentional habits, we work on our habits and we build them, we train our brain to see these new behaviors as safe. Because remember, the primary job of our brain is to keep us safe. And when we shift this mindset, right, and we shift the thoughts that we keep repeating inside our head, that's when we change the lens through which the brain actually interprets the world.
Interesting.
If you know what I mean. So the outcomes aren't actually accidental, they're very much intentional.
Oh, wow. So we try intentionally to make our brain feel that is the normal. That's
right. And building habits that work for us in the long run.
Amazing. Nim, you often speak about psychology of communication. What are the most communication mistakes people make, especially in multicultural environments like Australia?
Well, the biggest communication mistake people make, according to me, is to assume that everyone around you thinks the same way you do, right? And processes information the same way you do, which is a big mistake.
Right.
And I find that some of the common mistakes are, and you might laugh when you hear this, over-explaining or oversharing, right? Often we tend to overshare.
Wow.
Not everyone needs to know everything. So there's oversharing and then there's undersharing or under-explaining.
Wow.
So this is because people often misjudge how much others need to actually know in different contexts. That's one mistake. The second is not checking for understanding. Has the opposite person understood what you're trying to communicate? That is another mistake. So many migrants, often avoid, and I'm saying this because I'm myself a migrant. Many migrants often avoid saying things like, I didn't quite get that, or, could you expand on that, out of fear of judgment, perhaps. So just respect, depending on your cultural context. So that's one. The third thing I find as a communication mistake is often assuming, also mistaking fluency for being intelligent. So often we think that the faster we speak something makes us sound smarter.
You're just ticking boxes of things we did, all of us
have been through that, right?
Yeah, wow.
So I think when you try to slow down, clarify, and make sure that the listener is aligned with you, that's when communication truly can become impactful.
Wow, that is very interesting. Now, your workshops focus on leadership and workplace relationships. What behavioral patterns have you distinguished that the high-performing teams have from the, if I can say, dysfunctional teams?
Great question. And there are some very fundamental differences between a high-performing team and, like you said, one that's not functioning at an optimal level. Firstly, high-performing teams have got open channels of communication. Right? So they communicate openly, they communicate honestly, they practice active listening, something which is very, very important because you can't be a good communicator unless you're a good listener.
Yes.
So they practice active listening, they share ideas, and especially when there are conflicts which are given in any team, they approach and address those conflicts constructively. That's the main trait of a team that's functioning at a high level. On the other hand, dysfunctional teams often tend to avoid difficult conversations. They run away from difficult conversations.
Stay in the safety zone.
Which doesn't help anyone. There's often blaming others, which happen, I didn't do it, this one did it, that kind of, finger pointing. And then there is a lack of trust. So I see those as the fundamental differences between these two different types of teams.
Wow. Now that you pointed these points, it's quite easy for our, hopefully, audience see themselves in which team they are.
Yes.
Well, hopefully in the functional one. Many migrants, Nim, struggle with confidence, identity, or self-expression, and you did mention a few earlier. What have you seen in in the coaching experience that you've done that sheds light on why this is happening, and how do you think people can really overcome it?
Well, according to me, this struggle with confidence, with identity, etc., it's not just about knowing a language or it's not just about skills. It's actually about whether you feel seen, whether you feel heard, whether you feel valued in a system that might be feeling unfamiliar to you, right? So that's what it boils down to. And that's what creates a lot of self-doubt, a lot of hesitation, even a sense of invisibility. Right? It often creates that. So what I do, which I find often helps the people I work with, is firstly I help them reconnect with their own strengths, their own values. It's important to be aware of your strengths and values, and you'll be surprised to know a lot of people don't even know. When I say what are your top 3 values, a lot of people struggle with actually articulating and pinpointing those values. So I make them aware of their strengths, their core values, and recognizing that their own experiences, their own perspectives are unique. Step 1 is to recognize that. Step 2 is to practice expressing yourself in a way that feels authentic. Right? So when you follow this sort of 2-step approach, that's when I think people
So by being authentic, you mean kind of acting natural, like being natural in your personality?
True to yourself, true to your values, etc. And when you try to express your ways in small ways, it could be, speaking up in a meeting, for example. It could be when you believe someone has said something to you that is not fair, then speaking up on your own behalf.
Speak up to yourself.
Right? And initially that could strike terror in your heart because you're not used to it. But the more you stay aligned with who you are at your core, I think it'll become easier.
Lovely. Wise words out there. Personal development, Nim, often clashes with societal pressure or cultural expectations, if I can say. How do you help people usually navigate the emotional side of change?
I think the root of the problem lies in the clash between what we are supposed to do versus what we feel we are called to do, right? Like you said, there's societal expectations.
Pressure,
And then when there's a clash between what we feel, this is what I was born to do versus this is what I'm supposed to do according to expectation. I think that's where the problem lies. So I help usually people navigate this by firstly creating awareness about these pressures. You've got to firstly understand what are the pressures that surround you. And then how do they show up emotionally for you? Is there guilt? Is there fear? Is there self-doubt? Recognizing that, pinpointing that, putting a spotlight on that is important.
Right.
And then I help them actually align their actions with their values and with their long-term goals, not just with external expectations, right? And this can be done in small, manageable steps that help them. Confidence is usually built step by step. There's not one large leap of faith that you can always take. Sometimes it's all about taking those tiny steps that move you forward.
I was going to ask, restructuring, if I can say, your brain is not an easy task to do. So how long does it take? Like, it's not happening overnight. Does it take a session to a minimum of 10? What would you say?
I find that when I'm coaching, I'm not telling people something that they've never heard before or something that they don't know already. What I do is I get them to act in ways that they haven't acted before, and that's where transformation lies. So restructuring the brain in and of itself really begins with you accepting that there's a different way to think, or there is a different way to act compared to what you've been doing up until now. So it's not so much some clients, they'll have one aha moment, at their very third session perhaps. And then it kickstarts their journey towards rediscovering themselves. And for some, it could take a little bit longer. You've got to be open, though, to change. You've got to be open to learning.
Yes, of course. But, if I can say, imposter syndrome is there. And it's something you've spoken about frequently. From your perspective, why is it so widespread, and what does the science say about overcoming it?
The reason I talk so much about imposter syndrome is because it is incredibly common.
Wow.
Right? Particularly amongst high achievers, and definitely amongst high achievers who are also migrants.
Yes.
Right? This typically happens because people often feel they don't belong in a new environment. Right? And it's this inner voice that keeps sort of knocking at your brain's door telling you, I'm not good enough, or maybe I just got lucky, and people are going to figure out I'm not as talented as they think I am. It's that inner voice that creates that havoc. And science typically tells us that imposter syndrome is linked to cognitive distortions.
Wow.
Right? It's the way our brain misinterprets the evidence about our own competence. So we've got evidence that we are good. We've got the proof that we've achieved a lot of things, but it's how your brain looks at it and interprets it that causes the imposter syndrome. So when you talk about overcoming imposter syndrome, it's not as simple as eliminating self-doubt, because you can rarely eliminate something completely. You can minimize it perhaps, but you can't eliminate it. So it's more about building awareness, right? It's more about reframing your thoughts and the stories you tell yourself. You will know if you stop really to internalize, you will recognize that throughout the day, you're telling yourself stories. You're telling yourself a narrative about who you are and stuff like that. So it's about reframing those stories we tell ourselves that can eventually help us navigate imposter syndrome.
Wow, that is very interesting. I am overtaken. Your books, Nim, and coaching that you do highlights the power of storytelling. And you just started this next part of my question. Why does the human brain really respond so strongly to the stories? And how ordinary people use this storytelling to just influence and inspire or even heal?
Wow. So stories I find are powerful because deep down our brains are truly wired for a good story. Stories engage not just our rational side but also our emotional side. And that's why you'll find that when somebody's teaching or coaching, even, let's say you're teaching your children a particular concept, stories will often tend to help that concept stick in their brain more than if you just recite the facts.
That's true.
Right? So that's how our brains from, ancestral times have been wired for a good story. Now, storytelling is not just for us authors, or it's not just for leaders, it's for everyone. And the way to actually use storytelling to maybe inspire your audience or to heal your listener is by making sure you're talking about lived experiences that are highlighting some kind of lesson. Right? So if you talk about, for example, you tell people about a mistake you made and what you learned from that mistake and how you're using that knowledge now to lead a better life. In fact, my second book out of the 4 that I've written so far, called Unlock the Real You, every chapter is a mistake I've made in my life.
Oh, wow.
And it talks about the mistake.
I hope there's not a lot of chapters in there.
Lots of chapters. Very proud to say.
Oh, wow.
Made lots of mistakes. They do say that if you want to achieve your full potential, you'll probably end up making more mistakes than the others.
That's true.
Because if you don't try, you'll never make a mistake and you'll never grow. So, that's my take on how stories can actually help.
So you are storytelling your mistakes to hopefully have other people not do the same mistake.
Exactly. There's
Because
so many
our
mistakes
brain
you can
wires it differently.
Yeah, you can make plenty on your own.
Wow.
Why repeat ones that others have?
Well, not everyone understands that, especially our kids, do they? That is amazing. Nim, if I can tackle a little bit about, our future. With AI nowadays, with the remote work and rapid technological change, communication is evolving faster and different than ever. How is this affecting the confidence, do you think, in human behavior and the relationships?
Well, AI is here to stay, so we have to embrace it. We cannot run away from it. We've got to learn to live with it and help it live better lives just by embracing what's here to stay. So I find that AI and technological changes are impacting how we feel, how we behave, how we relate to each other. So on one hand, of course, there are all the pros of technology, right? It helps you connect faster. It helps you collaborate on a global level. It helps you actually access more information than ever before. If you look back to our parents' time and their parents' time, we didn't have access to as much information as we do today. So there's definitely the plus. But on the other hand, what it's also creating, sadly, is miscommunication. It's creating isolation. All of that is leading to self-doubt and, a breakdown in confidence. So human behavior, I find, is also shifting thanks to all these advances in technology and AI, etc. So often there are no face-to-face cues because everyone's operating on Team or Zoom or things like that. So there are no
human touch, kind of.
That's right. That's right. So we are really relying more on these digital signals, which are not really helping anyone. It's leading to a lot of misunderstandings and things like that. So I just think that the way forward is to actually listen actively when somebody is speaking, express yourself in an authentic manner, and slowly build trust. I think that's the way forward.
Lovely. We should do that. Do you see new research in behavioral psychology or neuroscience that's going to influence the coaching and leadership space in the next few years? Is there something new?
100%.
Yeah.
Well, new research in behavioral psychology and neuroscience is actually starting to shape a lot of coaching, a lot of leadership that we see around us. We are learning that the brain is driving almost everything. Right? About how we lead, about how we make decisions, about the choices we make, about how we handle stress, how we relate to others, all of that. For example, studies have shown that when leaders actually create psychological safety in the workplace, people feel like their staff feel a whole lot more confident to speak up and collaborate. So this means that nowadays coaches are going just past giving advice, just past giving strategies. We're actually helping people understand how their brain is responding to change or how their brain is responding to stress. And we're teaching them practical ways to manage it.
Amazing. Wow. Now, you've been in this industry for quite a while now, and I'm sure you've seen the cause and pros, if I can say, about it, and some gaps in it. If you could redesign how communication and emotional intelligence are taught in schools or workforces, if I can say, what would you change, Nim?
My favorite topic. I could talk all day about this.
Let's do that.
Well, firstly, I'd start by making it practical.
Right.
I'd start by making it experiential. I'd start by making it continuous rather than just depending on theory or having a one-off workshop. I find that all of these things, because there's no continuity in it, it often, therefore, it doesn't have the impact it's meant to have. In schools, I would probably create, activities which help children practice things like active listening, conflict management, decision making. Interestingly enough, the public speaking programs we teach at NIMS Institute are not just traditional public speaking programs. We're also teaching children life skills, exactly like the ones I just talked about, empathy building, decision making, all of that. In workplaces, I would probably focus on creating more safe places, that encourage people to have open and honest conversations. That's what I do.
So basically active workshops in workplace rather than just a one-off workshop to teach you how to do it.
Yes, and experiential, so based on lived experiences.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Now, about schools, I agree with you because I was never taught any of that.
No, none
the
of us
maximum
was.
is to go say a speech up. But yeah, we definitely need something more practical. Thank you for that. Now, towards the end of my show, I always love to play a little game, if I can say. And it's a myth-busting conversation where I'd like to give you some statements about communication and personal development. Just tell me if they're true or false and maybe just a little why. Are you ready?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do this. Confidence is something you're born with.
False. I find that I personally, as a child, was never confident. It's very much a built skill. And I find that confidence is born when you learn to do the things that you're afraid to do. So it's something you acquire over time.
So it's part of the restructuring that we spoke
The
about.
brain, yes.
Interesting. Good communicators are always extroverts.
False. I think good communication is all about how well you listen, how well you understand, how well you express yourself, how clearly you express. I do want to talk a little bit very quickly about a lot of people think extroverts are people who talk a lot and introverts are people who don't talk a lot. Actually, it is about where you draw your energy from. So anyone who draws energy from being around lots and lots of people is an extrovert. Someone who draws energy from solitude and being by yourself is an introvert. So from that lens, I am an introvert. I love being on my own. I love solitude. And yet my profession is all about talking, meeting people. So that's a whole different conversation. But to answer your question.
Oh, that's interesting because I personally thought that an extrovert is just that
Someone
sociable person and talks a lot and all that, but that's not the case. You learn something new. My next sentence would be positive thinking is enough to change your life.
False. I believe that optimism or positive thinking can definitely help us feel motivated, but research in psychology actually shows that taking action is what drives results. So it's all well and good to have positive thinking, but unless you take specific concrete steps,
I agree.
nothing much is going to change.
It's like this little thing that I say, you want to win the lotto, you have to buy it first.
You got to be in it to win it.
100%. We can multitask effectively. What's your
a vehement false. I don't believe one can multitask effectively, because when you're so-called multitasking, what you're actually doing is just rapidly switching attention from one task to another. That's actually what's happening when we say we're multitasking.
Okay.
Now, each switch that you do of your attention, it comes with a cognitive cost. Right? And this can reduce your focus. It can increase your errors. So you'll often find that people are trying to multitask, which is basically switching attention from task A to task B. It often can lead to increased errors and decreased focus. So I truly believe that focusing on one conversation at a time, one task at a time, is perhaps
and
the
I
way
thought
to
being
go.
multitask is something positive, but it doesn't look like it.
I personally, this is my take, of course, that multitasking and it being effective to
Two
me
different things.
is
wow.
Yeah.
My last statement for today would be most people leave jobs because of money.
False. I have coached a lot of people, and most of the people who have left jobs have been because of human behavior. It's been because of the people they surround themselves with. A lot of people leave because of toxic managers. It's never, it could be great pay, but if it is toxicity around them in terms of who they work with, that's a big cause for leaving jobs.
Wow, Nim, do you believe that this is towards the end of our conversation today? It was so informative and so interesting to a point where I'm like, no, my paper is finished. I don't have any more questions for you today. But thank you for joining us, and thank you for shedding the light on science and the human stories behind communication, mindset, and personal growth. I really appreciate your time with us today.
Thank you so much. I've truly enjoyed, and I value your time. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Now, before we go, I always like to tell our listeners, whether you're navigating your career, your relationships, or your own inner story, remember that small shifts in communication and mindset can create powerful long-term change. Take the time this week to check in with yourself, your habits, your thoughts, your goals, and give yourself permission to grow. This was Scientifically Speaking with Christine on Oz Arab Media. Until next time.